If you're thinking about adding a new offer to your business, maybe adding an event to an offer, whatever it might be, ask yourself if the idea aligns with your core values, who you serve, how you add value, and your long-term vision. I'm Amy Porterfield, ex-corporate girl turned CEO of a multi-seven-figure business. But it wasn't all that long ago that I lacked the confidence, the budget, and the time to focus on growing my small but mighty business. Fast forward past many failed attempts and lessons learned, and you'll see the business I have today. One that changes lives and gives me more freedom than I ever thought possible. One that used to only exist as a daydream. I created the Online Marketing Made Easy podcast to give you simple, actionable, step-by-step strategies to help you do the same. If you're an ambitious entrepreneur or one in the making who's looking to create a business that makes an impact and a life you love, you're in the right place, friend. Let's get started. Hey there, welcome back to Online Marketing Made Easy. Today, I'm taking you behind the scenes of one of the biggest decisions I made this year in 2024, introducing not just one, but two in-person events to my business. Now, if you've been in my world for some time, you know that I haven't done an in-person event in over 4 years. COVID really threw off a lot of things. Like I was on a roll with live events and then COVID hit and then I hadn't done one for 4 years, which is wild. And this introvert soul here loves that. Like I actually don't necessarily love being in person. However, I really wanted to push myself out of my comfort zone. So during that time, those 4 years, I've had so many people ask if I'd ever consider launching an in-person mastermind. And I honestly thought that an in-person mastermind wasn't for me. But it was just so wild how many women especially asked me if I would ever do a mastermind. So the thing is, my teaching style, my personality, my comfort zone, my introvertness, none of it seem to line up with hosting an event or teaching in person. I've always been way more comfortable creating communities and teaching online. And since my business has been doing well these last few years, I really didn't feel this need to push myself into something that felt a little bit or a lot outside of my element. I believe a big part of my success comes from consistently focusing on what works for me rather than constantly chasing the next new thing and falling into the trap of shiny object syndrome. I'm going to go on a tangent for a second and totally take a left turn here. But one of the things that I've learned now working with two different groups of women, and I'm going to tell you who I've been working with, is that it's so easy to get off track when your students, your clients, people you love to work with tell you they want something new. So if they'll say, you really should create a product about this, or you really should create a guide about this, or you should put together like a one-day workshop. And because we're creatives and we love variety, it's so easy for entrepreneurs to say, I should do that. My students asked for it. Let's go. And what happens is you start to create a bunch of open loops. And even to me, an open loop is you launch it once and then you never launch it again. To me, that's an open loop because I don't think we should create anything once and then never go back to it. But a lot of times, if you listen to your students saying, you should do this or you should do that, a lot of times some entrepreneurs will create it really quickly, not really have a long-term plan for it, and feel like the urgency to get it out because people are asking for it now. They get it out, and then it really never does much after that because most likely it didn't do that well the first time out. You probably didn't put a lot of thought into it. And so now you think, I don't know if that was worth it, but I did it. And it satisfied that desire to be creative and have variety. And I do think that is a trap that often happens in our businesses, meaning I don't think that's a good way to go. And so with that, being asked to do a mastermind over and over again, I could have easily just thrown something together years ago, even though my heart wasn't totally into it, because I knew I could make money with it. And I just believe that sucks the enjoyment out of our business. And that creates burnout when we are making snap decisions like that. So again, I'm going to come back. I got off a little tangent, but coming back. So here's the thing. Sometimes a shift happens and you just know it's time to make a change. And so that's exactly what happened for me with these two in-person events. So I had mentioned earlier that my business has been doing really well. And so I didn't really feel a need to add something to it. And so my business is still doing really well. But all of a sudden, I just had this overwhelming feeling that I should create a mastermind. Essentially, I kept waking up every morning with this undeniable feeling that now was the time to do something different. Now was the time to come out of my comfort zone. And I'm not really sure why, but it just kind of was this inner voice I had heard month after month this year in 2024. And so that's what today's episode is about. I'm going to break down the 3 reasons why I added 2 in-person events to my business this year. And really, I plan to continue to do this next year in 2025. Do another mastermind and do another, what I call the Millie Club. Stay with me, I'll explain that. My hope for this episode is that if you're considering launching a new offer next year, let's say in 2025, because we're at the end of 2024 now, this episode will give you insight into the signals that I looked at to know that the timing was right and that I was ready. But before we dive in, let me give you a quick rundown of the 2 events that I did do this year and how they fit into the bigger picture of my business. So these events were actually the starting point of 2 new programs I introduced. So I did 2 live events in October, but they're really tied to 2 programs. So first, my Made to Scale Mastermind. It's a 12-month program created for women who are ready to scale their businesses to the multi-million-dollar level. So the women in my mastermind are at the $1 million mark or more. And they are looking to scale, to grow. They're focused on hiring. They're focused on being more strategic. They're focused on streamlining their businesses. They're focused on bigger opportunities. So they already know how to make money. They already have established businesses. And again, my mastermind is called Made to Scale. So there's a focus on what it looks like to scale your business. The mastermind has 21 women in it. And I set it up initially with an application process. And then once everyone filled out the application, I got on calls, Zoom calls with the women that applied, and just to make sure that I'm a good fit for them and they're a good fit for me. And so it was a beautiful process. I absolutely loved it. And I have 21 amazing women in this group. So during the 12 months of this mastermind, we will do 3 in-person events, all in Nashville. They're 2 days each. We do 9 Zoom calls with me and the participants in the mastermind. So essentially, if it's a 12-month mastermind, 3 of those months were in person, 9 of those months were on Zoom. There's also a private Slack channel, and I'm in there and my team is in there. And then any questions that come up, we all jump in there to support. And I do a one-on-one coaching session with each of the members anytime throughout the year. When they want it, they can schedule that one-on-one call. And it's really crafted to support their multi-million-dollar growth. So that is my Made to Scale Mastermind. And just because I know it might come up, if you want to get on the wait list for my mastermind, it's amyporterfield.com/mastermind-waitlist. And I'll also put it in the show notes so you can grab it there as well. And I'll be opening up my next mastermind in probably Q2 of 2025. Okay, so the second event that I did in October was for a new 6-month program that I introduced called the Millie Club. Millie meaning million. So the Millie Club. So this offer actually came about while I was reviewing applications for my Made to Scale mastermind. I noticed there were so many incredible women applying who weren't quite ready for the mastermind. They weren't at that $1 million mark. But it was tough to turn them away because I knew that I wanted to work with them. I knew that I had a lot of value to share to women that, let's say, were around 500K, 600K, and they were looking to hit a million in a 12-month period. And I just remember what changed in my business, what changed in me when I had my first $1 million year. I think like psychologically, mentally, I just became a different person. It was a milestone that I was after. I was really proud of myself for getting my business there. And it just gave me this boost of confidence and this willingness to take risks more so than I had before. And then in addition to that, I really do believe that my business was quite honestly easier to navigate because I had set the foundations in place to get to that $1 million mark. And I believe if you can hit $1 million in your business, you can hit 5 million or 10 million over time, of course. And so there was just this really special place in my heart to help these women get to their first $1 million year. And I knew instantly when I was reading their stories and what they were all about and what they were striving for, I knew I had to support them. So that's when I decided I was going to create the Millie Club. And it's a 6-month program. And we do one person 2-day event. So we did that in October to kick it off. And we do Zoom calls for 6 months as well. And on the Zoom calls, people take turns doing hot seats where I speak into their businesses. Then we have a private Slack that is really engaged. People are asking questions, giving advice, making recommendations on the daily. And then we have structured accountability groups. So I'm really looking forward to this program. It just kicked off, and I know I'll do it again next year. I think the one thing I'll change is that I probably will do a 2-day event in the beginning and then a 2-day event to wrap it up. I'd have to increase the price to justify the expenses with that, but I don't think that much. But I do believe a 2-day event in the beginning and 2-day event to wrap it up would be really cool. I don't know, something I'm thinking about. So if you want to get on the wait list for the Millie Club, just go to amyporterfield.com/Millie Club -waitlist. And Millie is just Milly. I'll put it in the show notes as well. Okay, so if you're curious about how I knew I had the right women in my audience to make launching these programs a success, I actually explained that in episode 725, so not long ago. So amyporterfield.com/725. I'll link to that in the show notes as well. All right, so now that you know about these 2 new programs, I want to dive into the 3 reasons I felt it was so important to add them to my business and kick them off with in-person events. So the first reason is that my audience was asking for it, and there's not a period there, there's an and I felt a strong pull to make it happen for a specific segment of my audience. So as I mentioned at the start of this episode, I've been hearing requests for an in-person event from my audience for years, and I've been hearing a request for a mastermind for years. But I also believe it's not wise to respond to every request, as I mentioned. I just think, again, it's a quick path to burnout and taking your focus off of what really matters in your business. So to introduce something new, you need a clear sense, backed by research, that this new experience will make a real difference for the people you serve and make an impact in the business you're building. So not everything has to be tied to revenue. Obviously, a mastermind or a club would be. So revenue is not always the most important thing. But if I'm going to do something big like this and get way outside of my comfort zone with live events that are attached to the program, I'm going to make sure it's profitable. I also teach women how to make money in their businesses. So I like to be a really great example of what's possible and how to scale a business. So again, I wanted to make sure that this was going to make a real impact for my students and for my business. Now, speaking of my students, I knew I couldn't create an event for everyone in my community. So I'm saying event, it's obviously tied to a program, but let's just talk about the fact that my mastermind has 3 live events. And obviously I can't do these 3 live events for everyone in my community, nor did I want to do an event with thousands of people there. That is just not my style. I'll never say never. However, right now, not anything I'm looking for. So I wanted the event to be connected to an offer that would truly transform people's lives. And that meant getting specific about who I would serve. So once I knew what the offers were going to be, so Mastermind, Millie Club, and who they served 2 different audiences. I could see how starting the journey with a face-to-face experience was the right move. And I could see how important it was for building a foundation of trust and connection, especially since these women will be working together for either 6 months or 12 months. So to me, the live event at the very beginning for both programs was really important, not only for them to connect with me, because many of them knew who I was. I've met some of them at other events. I really wanted them to connect with each other. Just recently, one of my mastermind members told me she did an hour-long session with another mastermind member to get value around a very specific topic for her business, meaning the other mastermind member was an expert in this area that she could really get value from. And when she told me they did an hour session together, it was like music to my ears. What I care about more than anything is for these women to connect with each other, because I was in masterminds from the very first day I quit my 9-to-5 job with Tony Robbins. I was in a mastermind I really couldn't afford, but I wanted it bad. And so connecting with these women, some of the women that I was in a mastermind with over 15 years ago are still dear friends of mine, and we still collaborate together. And so I know these relationships are really important. And so that was the number one reason that I wanted to make sure that we got together to build trust and connection with each other. Now, going forward with these groups, as we move into our Zoom calls and our Slack discussions, everyone already has that personal connection and a better understanding of who they're working alongside. Because if you haven't met someone in person, you're likely not going to pour out your heart about maybe a challenge you're having in your business in a Slack channel. But if you had a glass of wine with them, if you sat next to them at this event and really connected, if you went out to dinner with them at night, it's a different story. And I can't emphasize enough just how rewarding creating these personal connections have been. So seeing everyone open up, offering genuine feedback, celebrating each other. Like I mentioned, the 2 women who got together and supported each other. Moments like these remind me that it's so important to not feel alone. So in a room of people navigating similar challenges, you just realize there are countless ways to approach and achieve your goals, and your perspective shifts. These women were not just connecting in those rooms, they were inspiring each other to see new possibilities and to get unstuck if they were just really facing something they couldn't move beyond. So that's my first reason for adding these in-person events to the programs that I created this year. So if you're thinking about adding, let's say, a new offer to your business, I want to stress to make sure that there's a real purposeful drive behind it, not one that's attached to your ego, but one that aligns with what your specific audience truly needs and has been asking for. But also, if you're going to add a live event to a program you're creating, make sure it aligns with your bigger goals of your business. Which brings me to the second reason why I decided to do these live events along with the programs I created. They align with my values and long-term vision for my company. So lately, I've been working closely with a business coach, And through our sessions, I've started to realize that my business's purpose, my why, it's been evolving. And so while I don't fully know exactly what this will look like yet, and I tend not to talk about something until it's kind of materialized because I think that's more valuable for you to hear, I do know that I want these advanced business owners in my audience. I want more of them. Women that are making 100K or more, women that are looking to make that $1 million milestone, or women that are making millions but looking to scale in a way that they're not burnt out. So I really want to work with these women and I want to help them feel confident and empowered in spaces where meaningful revenue growth, wealth building, and high impact business strategies are being discussed. I've said this before and I'll say it again. I do not believe women talk about their businesses and talk about wealth enough, especially in the circles where it counts. And I believe that it is my mission to help create these circles and foster these conversations. And it was really beautiful. In one of the masterminds, there was a woman, she makes a lot of money. We're talking millions and millions and millions. And she's never said out loud to anyone how much money she makes. Now, look, I don't think we should flaunt it. And it's not even about flaunting. Hey, if you want to flaunt it, flaunt it. So I kind of take that back. But I don't think it's necessary to brag about your wealth and lead with your ego. However, in the appropriate groups, to talk about making money and how you make it is so inspiring to others. I've told this story on the podcast before, but it's so relevant and it makes so much sense here. But James Wedmore once told me this really cool thing. And this was years and years ago. Since then, his business has skyrocketed. But one time he told me that we were at a mastermind. James and I were in a peer-led mastermind. So many good memories from it. Many, many, many years ago. I was probably in my second or third year of business. It must have been my third year of business because that's when I hit my first $1 million milestone. And I said that, actually, I think it was like 950,000, but let's round up. And I mentioned how much revenue I had made that year. And James said he heard that and he's like, what the hell? If Amy can do it, so can I. Like, he knows my business. We're very similar in many ways. And he's like, wait, and we have similar audiences. He's like, I can do that. And so he breezed through the next year of million. He probably made multi-million, but he shared with me, like, he had this one thought, like, wait a second, I should be doing that. And I think those moments are important to hear how other people are doing it and what they're doing. I also think that we shouldn't shy away from this topic. And why? Okay, listen, I know I'm talking a lot about women. I think some men also don't talk about it, but I've been in many rooms with many men. And my experience is that they talk about it like it's no big deal. They talk about everything related to business. And I just think that women are a little bit more reserved. Not all women, but the women I've been in circles with. And sometimes they just don't want to talk about it, but sometimes they're just timid to talk about it. I want to talk about it more. And I want to serve other women and help them realize what's possible for them. So creating these live events, it felt perfectly aligned with this new and expanded purpose that I've been exploring. And there's no better way to really understand what you want to do, how you want to do it, who you want to work with, than getting in the room with the right people. And so really the selfishness of this, but I knew that there was a bigger vision, but I wanted to be in the room with these women. I wanted to not only serve them, but just learn from them and understand what they need and what's keeping them back or sometimes playing small and on the sidelines and what's needed here. And so it was really valuable for me as well to be a better servant, guide, teacher. And also with this idea of like talking about money and wealth and business, sometimes from my own experience, I know this, that when you get in rooms with other people that will start talking about their businesses, playing a bigger game, what they're doing, it is so easy to think, oh my gosh, everyone in this room is doing bigger things than me. I am so behind. I should be doing 100 more things than what I'm doing. I'm an idiot. Like all of a sudden you get in your head and you're just small and everyone is better than you and doing bigger things and you are so behind. It's the craziest thing. And I thought if I have felt that in masterminds in the beginning, even when I'm more successful, it just happens. I feel really overwhelmed at times of everything I should be doing and I'm not. And so what I mentioned at the beginning of both of my groups at the live events, I said, I know this can happen. And I shared what I've gone through and I shared how completely normal it is. And I think by acknowledging it, we were able to focus on what really mattered in that group, coming together, building community, trusting each other, connecting, sharing, learning from each other, and letting go of the self-doubt. Like, listen, it might come up, acknowledge it, and then move on. Let it be there, but then move on and focus on what you need out of this group. And I knew I was the right person to deliver a message of, you may feel this way, and here's what we need to do about it, because I have so been there. And the minute I mentioned this kind of feeling that comes over us in masterminds like this, I think every woman in the room was shaking her head yes. Like, oh my gosh, you just got into my head. So I felt good, like, okay, I'm not alone. This is very normal. And getting back to the women in the room, I made the goal at these live events. My goal was, this isn't about me. I'm not really one to want all the attention in a room when we're in person. And so I told myself, okay, I want to help these women. I want to help them with their strategy. I want to help them grow in their business. I want them to scale. I want them to get to their first million. But I know it's not all about me. And so I also knew, taking from that, is that I don't need to teach them every strategy. It's not really actually heavy teaching. I'll always do some kind of teaching, but instead of like getting heavy into teaching, because these women don't need more training, I think more than anything, they really need to understand what strategies they can apply to what they're already doing and really understand how other women's businesses work and maybe what they're missing. Instead of getting deep into the training, if I could just help each woman discover that one strategy or insight that has the potential to elevate their business to a next level, I feel like I've done my job. And so this is where the in-person setting becomes incredibly powerful, because in the room together, we can deep dive, we can provide immediate feedback, we can bounce ideas off each other. And one thing that I did is I shared what my business looks like, big picture, how I run my business, how I scale my business, what my products look like, what my team looks like. And I think that was really valuable. So it wasn't like me teaching a brand new training, but more so opening up my business and sharing what has worked for me. And then of course, sharing the good, bad, and ugly when we do Q&As and when different topics come up. It's not all rosy. So I share it all. So that's my second reason for adding in-person events. I kind of went over a lot there, but essentially if we kind of whittle it down, is that if you're thinking about adding a new offer to your business, maybe adding an event to an offer, whatever it might be, ask yourself if the idea aligns with your core values, who you serve, how you add value, just your core values of your business and your long-term vision. I am looking to begin attracting a different type of audience. I haven't figured it all out yet. I feel really vulnerable just even saying that to you right now, but I will figure it out. I feel very confident and excited about it. So I see my long-term vision with the business that I have right now, and getting into proximity with these women and serving them the way I have been able to serve them is absolutely aligned with my long-term vision. So one caveat to that is to say, let's stop doing short-term gains that aren't for a long-term vision. Meaning, let's stop creating, like I mentioned earlier, a quick course because you can get a quick cash injection. What if you put your focus into what's already working or working on a new program that you're going to have for years to come? I think we have to be really selective about how we spend our time and what we introduce to our audience. And if you're thinking about doing something new, here's something I want you to think about. When something like a new idea, new offer, new event resonates deeply with your purpose and your long-term vision, and you know instinctively how to shift your content to match that, it's often a sign that the time could be right to bring your new idea to life. Always remember, I'm just going to throw this in there. Anything new you do means you're saying no to something else or you're taking your focus off something else. Be very mindful of that. Okay, so this brings me to my final reason that I created these 2 in-person events that were tied to 2 new programs, and that was to deepen my understanding of these remarkable women I'm here to serve. I alluded to this a little, but I want to get into it more specifically. Stepping into these in-person spaces that I knew I could add value. So again, it wasn't all about me. It wasn't all about me doing research or me learning more, but after I got my initial goal of I'm going to serve these women, this is how I'm going to serve them, this is how I'm going to add value, and orchestrating it to make sure it's all about them, a nice kind of secondary benefit is that I actually was able to learn more about the women I wanted to serve. So I had a moment early on in the Millie Club event that really highlighted this. So I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I just got to tell you. So one of the women, these Millie Club women are so incredible. I love them. And one of the women, we were talking about finances and how we manage our finances in my business. And a woman asked, how much money do you keep in your business checking account? Like at all times, is there like a number that you always have a certain amount? And I told her that at the beginning of every month, let's say January 1, February 1, whatever it is, I always start with $1 million. So I always have $1 million in my account, and not at all times during the month, but when we start the month over, whatever I'm doing, I know I will have $1 million. And if I have more than that, that usually is put into an account for my distribution that I take out of the company every quarter. And so we have just a special account, but we start every month with $1 million. And so she asked this, and I'm like, oh, $1 million. And then there was another woman in the group that said to me, oh, yeah, me too. And I looked at her and I said, right? Like, yeah, that makes sense. And I looked at her and realized, oh, she's joking. She's absolutely joking, meaning I just threw out a number that was ridiculous to them. As I should have known, these women are trying to hit $1 million year. They're likely not keeping $1 million every month in their checking account. Who would do that? And I never did that before I hit $1 million. I actually probably didn't have this rule of always having $1 million in my business account, probably like 5 years ago. And remember, I'm a multi-million dollar business with a very big payroll and responsibilities that I have to just protect myself in case anything goes awry. I know I can always support the business I've created. So it's way more than I need, but it's a security and it's always worked with me. And if any surprising things comes up, I know I can always support it. So it just works for me. But when I looked at one of my club members and I'm like, oh my God, she's joking. And I fully thought she was serious. Everyone laughed. And one woman's like, I keep $75,000. And another woman's like, me too. And that seems to work. And they all had their numbers and talked about it. And we got it cleared up. But what I realized in that moment, and where I was genuinely embarrassed, but I, of course, laughed it off, is I was so out of tune with these women. Like, why would I ever think that that number meant something to them? But because I've been in my own world for so long, it was like a wake up call that, oh, Amy, you have to make sure that you understand where these women are in their journey. I'm like 10 plus years ahead of them, most of them. And revenue wise, definitely they're in my club because they want to be making multi-millions in their business and they're not yet. So it was a powerful reminder of just how important it is to meet your audience exactly where they are. And it's extra important if you are ahead of them, which most of us are. If we're, I always say you need at least a 10% edge where you're 10 steps ahead of those you serve so you can show them the way. So we're always steps ahead of those. It just depends on how many steps. And we've got to remember where they are. So being in this room with these women, it gave me such great admiration for where they're at and how hard it is and the struggles they have, and gave me so many ideas of how I want to serve them, but also gave me a reality check. Don't compare your today with their today, like where they're at. They're not there yet. So be compassionate and be mindful and realistic. And the value you add has to meet them where they're at. And it can be aspirational. They could be like, oh, I can't wait till the day that I always have $1 million in my checking account. That feels good. So I'm all about aspiration. But when I'm ready to, okay, here's what you need to do, I have to be careful of that. So my third reason for getting in these rooms with these amazing women is that I understand them at a deeper level, different than what I would in Slack or Zoom. Being in the room, hearing their conversations, really paying attention to the questions they asked, watching them be vulnerable in their hot seats, it's a whole different experience. And I believe that I can serve them more because I got in the room with them. So if you're thinking about doing live events, if you're thinking about adding a live event to a program, really think about like, what do you need to learn from them, and be mindful of where you might be off base so you can correct that and be even more of service to them. So that was hugely valuable for me. And I said at the beginning of this podcast episode that I don't necessarily like to be in person. And I will tell you, I loved it. I loved it with the mastermind women, and I loved it with the Millie Club women. And I probably loved it most because I felt such connection with them. Either their businesses are similar to mine, or they're on the same trajectory as I have been, or I just remember when I was where they're at. And I can just respect and have such compassion for just like what that feels like to be where they're at. And so overall, I'm very, very glad I did these live events. Now, don't expect me to be doing tons and tons in 2025, but I will continue to support my mastermind. And then I will continue to support the Millie Club. And most likely when the Millie Club is over, it started in October and it's 6 months. When it's over, actually right before it, I'll probably fill up a new Millie Club. And so I'm excited about that as well. All right, my friend, thank you so much for being here. I hope this little behind the scenes look at some new projects I've created this year sparks some creativity for you as well. And here's what I want to leave you with. Putting yourself out there and introducing something new in your business, it can lead to so many unexpected rewards. But you want to be really mindful of what you're adding. And I think the biggest takeaway I have for you today is make sure that whatever you're adding, you put together a long-term plan for whatever it is you're adding. Now, I also understand we have to leave room for experimenting. I do believe that there was a part of me that thought, okay, I'll do the Millie Club, I'll experiment with it. And if it's not something that serves me, I won't do it again. But if it does work, here's how I see it fitting into our long-term vision and strategy. So I left myself a little room to say, if this doesn't really feel right, I can decide not to do it again. But if I do it, here's where it would fit. So that's another way to look at it as well. So you don't have to be fully tied to something that you don't know how you're going to feel once it happens. So there you have it. Thanks so much for tuning in today. And I just hope you found this valuable. If you have an entrepreneurial friend that you think would also find it valuable, I'd love for you to grab the link and share the podcast or share this episode with an entrepreneurial friend. All right, my friends, I will see you on Thursday for more entrepreneurial goodness. Bye for now.